Welcome back to Cheddar's Opening Bell. Hurricane Laura is pummeling southwestern Louisiana after slamming into the state early Thursday morning. That storm gained strength, growing in intensity from a Category 1 to a high-end Category 4 with peak winds reaching 150 miles per hour. It has reportedly weakened since then to Category 2. Joining us now is Matthew Cappucci, meteorologist for the Washington Post, who is in Toomey, Louisiana. So what is the situation on the ground?
You know, it's like a big old tornado went through. I'm seeing pretty significant damage behind me right now. I'm on the side of Interstate 10, a major thoroughfare, and on the westbound side, all but one lane is blocked by trees. Here you see a couple trees toppled, blocking the breakdown lane, but earlier on, I was driving in from the east, and it was virtually impassable at some places. I saw significant damage to a steel truss building that was leveled, a big industrial building of some sort. I saw numerous mobile homes either flipped, destroyed, de-roofed over in the town of Sulphur. Numerous restaurants damaged heavily as well, some with shattered windows, projectiles having moved through into the building, and multiple tractor trailers, semi-trucks, flipped, toppled, even pushed off the highway. On the side of the highway right now, you can actually see a lot of water down in the culvert. This area saw upwards of 20 centimeters worth of rainfall. And where I was, about 6 or 7 kilometers off to the west, we saw wind gusts to 200 kilometers per hour nearby.
One of the big concerns with this storm was the storm surge. There were predictions of up to 20 feet of storm surge, which is just catastrophic and unsurvivable as it was being described. Did that materialize anywhere?
It did to an extent. We had reports about 10 feet in some areas, but you have to keep in mind, a lot of the areas that saw the worst surge are either not populated or don't necessarily have the observation equipment. So I venture to say, yes, we probably had a surge around 12, 13 feet in some areas. Probably wasn't quite as bad as anticipated because the forecasts we give are actually the 90th percentile, so a reasonable worst case scenario. So that fully didn't materialize all the way, but still a very significant surge event, and we had to be very careful when we were planning our location, given the propensity of many areas to flood.
What path is this storm currently taking? Is it still a danger?
It is still moving inland right now. Winds have come down significantly. Gusts probably about 60, 70 miles per hour right now. So rapid weakening has occurred since it's moved inland, because you have to keep in mind the Gulf of Mexico is around 90 degrees this time of year. That's its fuel, its life-giving elixir to sustain it. And once it's cut off from that, it slowly starts to weaken over land. Now, in this case, it's weakening more rapidly because at the same time it's cut off from the water, there's also an increase in shear, change of wind speed and direction with height, and that just kicks the heels out from underneath these storms. And so it'll start to move up the Arklatex, eventually into Arkansas, perhaps northern Louisiana, western Tennessee, and start to cross the Mississippi River and head east over the Tennessee Valley with a narrow area of about 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts, and likely redevelop perhaps as a subtropical or a tropical storm off the East Coast later on in the week or during the weekend.
This is not the first major storm that we've seen so far this season, and it's still relatively early. I guess this is kind of the peak of hurricane season, or at least we're getting into the peak of hurricane season. So what does that mean for the rest of the hurricane season, especially just, in the backdrop of a pandemic?
Well, so far, we've been about 200% as active as normal when you count up all the energy expended by hurricanes so far. Now, this was the first major hurricane, Category 3 plus of the year, which is good news so far. But at the same time, we have seen just a very busy season already. We're down to the M's in terms of names, L's and M's, which is sometimes a season's worth of storms. They're pretty unusual to see, and part of the reason, water temperatures. But at the same time, we have extra lifting motion over the Atlantic due to a wave called a convectively coupled Kelvin wave, and that's helping boost the amount of air moving upwards, and that's one thing that's really making this a very busy period that will likely last a couple more weeks. We should see a bit of a lull late September, early October, but then things could get even worse as we head into later October and perhaps rather late in the season this year.
Yeah, I remember Superstorm Sandy was at the end of October, and just look at the damage that did. For people who are in the path of this storm still, any advice? What should they be doing right now?
Yeah, this is a big rainmaker, so it's having less rain right now, but still some places might see 5 or 6 inches. So make sure you don't live in a floodplain. If you do, just have a plan to perhaps move to higher ground if you wind up under training downpours. Otherwise, the wind Not as bad as it could have been, but still pretty hefty in a number of areas, so make sure trees don't topple. Trees coming down, the biggest threat anytime you deal with wind. It's not what the wind is blowing, it's not that the wind is blowing, it's what the wind is blowing. And that's one thing people have to be cognizant of.
All right, Matthew Cappucci, great reporting, meteorologist for the Washington Post. Stay safe, and thank you so much for that report.